watching the Mystical Green Beanie.
Hey, what's going on, dudes and dudettes? I am the Mystical Green Beanie, and today I just want to talk about Action Comics 987, because, bruh, this comic was legit, and I was pleasantly surprised, because up until this point, quite frankly, I felt that it was time for Dan Jurgens to leave the book. Because I remember reading the first arc in Action Comics Rebirth, where it's just 7 or 8 issues of Superman, Lex Luthor, and Wonder Woman punching Doomsday. And for me, not only did I feel like the story got stale really fast, but it made me feel like Jurgens was representing everything that could have gone wrong with Rebirth. To me, it felt like he was reliving the glory days of the 90s, and just wanted to write Superman punching Doomsday, because that's a big highlight in his run, the death of Superman. And I gave a few issues here and there a shot afterwards, but nothing really clicked with me. And I think the straw that broke the camel's back was when I saw what he had done to Christopher Kent in Rebirth, and after that, I just completely wrote anything that Jurgens was going to do with Superman off. But then I hear about the Oz effect, and the only reason I picked this up was because this was a mystery that had been building since the middle of the New 52. So I was going to read this book just to find out who Mr. Oz was and get some closure. Well, that and the comic book store that I work at is really promoting the storyline, so it's not like I had a choice in the first place. So, yeah. But I read the book, and I really enjoyed it. So I put a copy aside for myself, bought it, and when I got home, I read it again, and I liked it even more the second time around. And here's why. So last week I was having a conversation with somebody about superheroes, and what I felt the difference between Marvel and DC superheroes are, and how ultimately, I feel like within the context of the real world, the DC heroes would be seen as complete idiots. And I say that because, at the core of their being, they're characters who strive to inspire people to be better. The DC heroes are there to set an example and inspire people to follow that example. But in order for that to happen, these characters need to live in a society where people aren't bound to the status quo. They need to live in a world where people are willing to change. And by that, I don't mean just talk about change. I mean, people need to be willing to do it. People are going to have to be willing to put aside their petty differences in order to achieve goals that were before seen as impossibilities. And we don't live in that world. But funny enough, literally 7 days after I have this conversation, this comic comes out and touches on everything that I just said. Okay, so before I go any further, I have to tell you who Mr. Oz is. So, spoiler warning, spoilers, 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 still spoilers. I swear to God, if you don't want this story spoiled for you and you're still here, you better not go to the comment section and cry about me spoiling this comic. Okay? Okay. So, Mr. Oz is Jor-el. Like, the Jor-el. Superman's biological Kryptonian father. Yeah, that Jor-el. And basically, what his whole deal is that he doesn't think that the world deserves his son. And not in the typical selfish parent kind of way where nobody believes that the world deserves their child. No, Jor-el sees Clark as a shining example of everything that humanity can be, maybe not physically, but definitely emotionally and spiritually. And he sees the world very much like I do, and he doesn't have any hope for humanity whatsoever. Now, I've seen many different reactions to this reveal. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people think it's the greatest thing ever, some people think it's the dumbest thing ever, and I can totally understand where everyone is coming from. But for me personally, based off this one issue alone, I don't see how Mr. Oz can or should be anyone else, and that's because his motivation is so personal. And I typically don't like to deitize Superman's mythos because A, that's been the obvious thing to do with Superman since 1978, and B, I feel like it makes Superman less human and less relatable. But within the context of this story in particular, there's no real way around it. Plus, this is one of the very few instances where it doesn't make Clark feel any less human. Anyways, the point that I'm getting at is that I feel like Dan Jurgens is paralleling Superman to Jesus and Jor-el to God. And the statement that he's making is that Jor-el sent Clark to Earth to be humanity's man of tomorrow. To be an example of the wonders humanity can accomplish in the very same way that God sent humanity Jesus to do the same. But the problem with that is that humanity is not only stuck in yesterday, but we are complacent in being stuck in yesterday. We don't want to progress. We don't want to live up to the example of Jesus or Superman or whatever. We choose to be selfish and greedy and petulant because it's in our nature to do so. It's in our nature to be cruel. It's in our nature to be self-destructive. It's in our nature to hate. And when Jor-el sees this, he feels as though his efforts were in vain. That humanity will never follow the example of Superman. That humanity will never follow the example of a messianic figure. Because we are hardwired not to. And we are inherently broken. Therefore, we aren't deserving of a messiah figure. We aren't deserving of a Superman. And he feels as though he should have sent his son somewhere else to a planet that did deserve him. And I just think that idea is brilliant. As for the art, it's done by Victor Bragdanovic? I think that's how you say his name. I hope that's how you say his name. If not, then I've just butchered this guy's name. But I like it. And by that, I mean it works for Superman. It's a style that, even though feels very Greg Capullo inspired, oddly enough, works very well for the character. And hell, I liked his art in the story arc where the Super Family fights General Zod and whatnot. But I don't feel like the art works for this story in particular. This is a story that, while yes, is very fun and filled with action, is also very dark, and it's very heavy. And unfortunately, Bragdanovic's art feels very light. And I don't feel like it works here as well as maybe, I don't know, Aaron Kruder or Jorge Jimenez or Pete Woods or Cully Hamner's art would have for this particular story. This is a story that, yes, requires something fantastical in nature, but requires a certain level of grit? I don't know, I just would have preferred for the art to have a little more weight to it, that's all. But yeah, this comic was fantastic. Again, much like the first issue of Dark Knight's Metal, I was not expecting to love this as much as I did. This is the Dan Jurgens that I know and love. Not the guy who wrote 8 issues of Superman and Doomsday punching each other for no reason. This is what I've been waiting for from this guy. This is what I've been expecting. But what about you? What did you think of this issue? What did you think of the reveal of Mr. Oz? And do you think that I'm a raging jackass for not liking the first few issues of Action Comics Rebirth? Let me know down below in the comment section. Also, if you like this video, hit the like button, share, support the channel, and if you want to see more content like this, all you have to do is subscribe. I'm the Mystical Green Beanie, thank you for watching, and as always, until next time, adios nachos, adios.